Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It happened at a dinner party. 12 people, soft jazz, candles, and laughter that felt borrowed. Her hand rested on my arm, but it might as well have been air. I was in mid-sentence, telling a story about something from work. Nothing important, just filler. That's when she cut in. You're just convenient. Not exciting. The room didn't go silent, but I did. Everyone else kept laughing, sipping wine, swirling stories. But in that instant, my pulse stopped registering sound. My wife smiled, like it was a joke, like calling me convenient with some cheeky flirt. But I saw it in her eyes. It wasn't a joke. It was a confession. Casual. Calculated. She reached for her wine, tilted her head like she was curious how I'd react. I didn't say a word. Didn't blink. Didn't move. Just let the words burn a hole through my chest while the rest of the table stayed oblivious. Someone asked her something, and she laughed. This loose, uninhibited sound I hadn't heard in months. Not around me. Not for me. Later, on the drive home, she didn't mention it. She scrolled her phone while I drove in silence. I watched her face glow blue in the passenger seat, reflected in the window. Detached. Comfortable. Like the night had gone perfectly. And maybe for her, it had. But something inside me had already started shifting. Not out of anger. Not jealousy. Not even heartbreak. It was something colder. The realization that I wasn't in her life. I was part of her scenery. Useful. Predictable. Safe. A placeholder. That night, she went to bed early. Claimed she was tired. Kissed me on the cheek, not the lips, and disappeared under the covers without waiting to see if I followed. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, still hearing that line. You're just convenient. She didn't know it then, but something irreversible had just started. Because I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand answers. I just stopped trying. Stopped reacting. Stopped giving her any part of me that could be twisted into guilt or desperation. She wanted excitement. She could find it. But she wouldn't find me waiting when she came back down. It was 2 days later when the first crack showed. I was in the garage fixing the shelf she'd been asking about for months. My hands smelled like metal and old wood when I heard the back gate creak. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wiped my hands, stepped into the hallway, and there he was. Trevor, her coworker. Supposedly just a team lead at the firm. She'd mentioned him a few times, always in passing. Too casually. He stood on our porch like he owned a piece of it, holding a folder, dressed too neat for a weekend. When he saw me, he smiled, that thin corporate smirk people wear when they're faking being harmless. Oh hey, he said. Didn't know you'd be home. I didn't answer. Just stared. He held up the folder. Just dropping this off for Megan. Work stuff. Megan wasn't home. And even if she was, work didn't show up like this. Not unannounced. Not with cologne strong enough to choke the roses by the steps. I took the folder. Didn't invite him in. Didn't say another word. His smile faltered. Tell her I said hi. I closed the door. He stood there a moment longer, waiting for something. Maybe a reaction. But I gave him nothing. Just silence. I put the folder on the table and went back to the garage. My hands weren't steady anymore. And not because of rage. Rage is loud. This was different. This was calculation. That night, Megan came home late. Claimed they had a meeting run over. Her voice was light, her eyes too busy scanning the fridge. She didn't ask about the folder. Didn't even notice it sitting there. She poured herself wine, asked me if I'd eaten. I nodded. She didn't push. Just floated past me like we were polite roommates sharing oxygen. When she went to shower, I opened the folder. It wasn't important. Just generic reports. But something about the handwriting on the sticky note inside, the little, thanks for everything, felt too personal. Too practiced. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions I already knew the answers to. Instead, I looked at the woman in my house and started building a quiet distance. Not emotional withdrawal. Strategy. The next day, I left early for work. Didn't text her. Didn't check in. By noon, she'd sent me a casual, "How's your day?" with a smiley at the end. The kind of message you send when you're afraid the thread's getting too thin. I replied 6 hours later. Fine. Busy. No punctuation. No warmth. She asked if I'd be home for dinner. I said maybe. That night, she made pasta. Her favorite, not mine. Set the table for two like we still lived inside something sacred. I sat across from her and ate without comment. She talked about some client drama, some new contract. Words that bounced off the air and landed nowhere. When she laughed at her own joke, I didn't smile. She noticed. She didn't say it, but I saw it in the way her fork slowed, how her posture tightened like she'd just remembered something important. Like maybe, for the first time, she felt alone in the room. That was the first crack, and it was just the beginning. I wasn't looking for proof. But once the blindfold slips, it's hard to stop seeing. It started small. Receipts in her coat pocket for places we'd never been. A new cafe across town. 2 lattes, 2 pastries. She didn't even drink lattes. One night, she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she went to shower. Notifications popped up like they'd been waiting for an audience. One was a file transfer from someone named Trev P. Another was a message on Slack, sent late, too late for anything professional. I didn't read it. Didn't have to. It's not always the content. It's the context, the timing, the carelessness. She trusted that I wouldn't look, that I was too checked out or too naive to notice. And for years, I probably was. But now I was observing everything, quietly, methodically. Her habits had changed. She stayed up later, claimed she was doing work in bed, headphones in, screen tilted just enough so I couldn't see. She changed her passcode a week after the dinner party, and her phone never left her side, not even in the bathroom. I used to think that kind of secrecy was about privacy. Now I understood. It was about control. One evening, I saw her car parked outside that same new cafe on my way back from the gym. She hadn't mentioned going out. She told me she was home all afternoon catching up on invoices. But there she was, sitting in the corner window. Not alone. He was with her. Same guy. Trevor. He leaned in too close. Smiled in that practiced, empty way. She touched his wrist for half a second when he laughed. It wasn't flirtation. It was ownership. Familiarity. They didn't see me. I didn't stop. I drove right past like I'd never seen a thing. I went home, took a long shower, and deleted every picture of us from my phone. Not out of rage. Not out of grief. Out of necessity. That night, when she walked in like nothing happened, I asked how her day was. Her answer was smooth. Polished. Quiet. Just worked from home. I nodded. Looked her dead in the eyes. Good. She kissed my cheek again. Routine. Detached. Hollow. I didn't confront her. Because confrontation is emotional. And I was past that. The next morning, I checked our shared credit card statements. 3 recent charges stood out. A boutique hotel. Dinner at a rooftop bar. 2 charges from rideshare apps late at night, miles from our neighborhood. I printed them, folded them neatly, slid them into an envelope, and tucked it into the drawer by my side of the bed. I wasn't collecting evidence for a fight. I was collecting clarity. She had already made her choice. She just hadn't said it out loud yet. But I wasn't waiting for a confession. I was preparing for departure. And still, she had no idea. She joked with friends on speakerphone, laughed like a woman untethered, told them how she felt light lately. Like things were finally starting to align. She thought I wasn't listening. I was. She thought I was asleep when she crept into bed 2 hours later than usual. I wasn't. I'd never been more awake in my life. That week, I started moving money. Not much. Just enough to feel the shift. Started storing documents in my office at work. Changed the password on my personal email. Set up a second phone number. It wasn't revenge. It was architecture. Quiet blueprints for an exit she wouldn't see coming. She wanted freedom. She was about to choke on it. It started with the silence. Not the kind that hangs in the air during an argument. No tension. No noise. Just absence. One Thursday morning, I didn't say goodbye when I left for work. No note. No reminder about the dry cleaning or her dentist appointment. Just walked out the door like the house was empty. Like she didn't exist. I turned off location sharing. Turned off read receipts. Stopped answering texts in real time. Sometimes I didn't answer at all. She called once around noon. I let it ring. A second time that evening. Straight to voicemail. Then came the messages. Are you okay? Where are you? I've called twice. I stared at them. Read every word. Then turned the phone face down and let the battery die. That weekend, I drove 3 hours out of town. Rented a small cabin near the lake. No Wi-Fi. No cell reception. I brought nothing but a gym bag, my journal, and a silence she'd forced me to master. When I came back Sunday night, she was pacing the kitchen, her phone clutched like a lifeline. You didn't say where you were. I looked at her. Calm. Steady. I didn't think it mattered. That shut her up. She followed me through the house like she was looking for evidence. As if I had something to confess. But I didn't owe her anything. Not anymore. She asked what was going on. I said I was tired, that I needed space. Her lips parted like she was about to argue. Then she stopped herself, walked away, disappeared into the bedroom, and slammed the door behind her like a child. She didn't understand. This wasn't about punishment. This was extraction. By Monday, I had removed my name from 2 joint subscriptions, canceled a streaming service she used daily, and changed the passwords on the utilities. She'd have to ask me now for the Wi-Fi, for the heat, for the life support. But I knew she wouldn't. Not yet. Her pride was still louder than her fear. That night, I moved half my clothes into the spare room. Said I was working late, needed quiet. She stared at the empty space in the closet for a long time. Didn't say a word. The next day, I called my bank. Separated my accounts. Froze the shared credit card. Booked a consultation with a lawyer and paid in cash. She didn't notice, yet. But the silence was starting to suffocate her. She began hovering in doorways. Offering coffee. Asking if I wanted to watch something together. Reaching, subtly, for contact. I gave her nothing. No warmth. No anger. Just clean disconnection. She started waking up earlier, doing her makeup just to walk through the kitchen. She asked if I was seeing someone. I told her I wasn't sure what I was seeing anymore. It wasn't a lie. She was unraveling. Checking her phone more often. Leaving it face down now, like I hadn't noticed the change. Asking mutual friends if I was acting weird. Wondering, aloud, if something was wrong with me. But nothing was wrong. Not anymore. For the first time in years, I felt control sliding back into my hands like a weapon I'd forgotten I owned. I had nothing to explain. No fight to pick. No point to prove. I just stopped showing up. Stopped filling in the spaces she used to take for granted. She was alone now. Exactly what she said she wanted. The next move wasn't loud. It was surgical. By then, I already knew enough about him. Trevor Price. Divorced twice. Lives in a modern loft he can't afford. Drives a leased Mercedes, but maxed out 3 credit cards. He wasn't dangerous. He was careless. A man with ambition and no discipline is easy to break. I didn't need to confront him. I just needed leverage. It started with a quiet email. From a burner account. No threats. No accusations. Just a tip. A few flagged invoices from a recent project. A mistake in the reporting. An internal memo he shouldn't have forwarded to his personal account. I attached the files. Subject line, might want to look into this. Sent it to his department head. And then I walked away. 3 days later, Megan was quiet at dinner. Barely touched her food. Said work was weird. Trevor had been called into a meeting. HR involved. Something about breach of conduct. I nodded. Said nothing. She didn't ask why I wasn't surprised. The next morning, she spent an hour getting ready. Full makeup, new blouse, spritzed perfume twice. When she walked past me in the hallway, I didn't even look up from my coffee. She lingered. I kept scrolling. When she left, I sat down and watched the cameras, installed 2 weeks prior. Just one outside, facing the driveway. Enough to see when she came home later that night. Mascara smudged, phone clutched like it was glued to her hand. She wasn't crying, but she looked like she had forgotten how to breathe. Whatever happened at work that day, it rattled her. She went straight to the shower. Spent 40 minutes in there. Water running over something she couldn't scrub away. I didn't ask questions. Didn't offer comfort. She walked out in silence, wrapped in a towel, and found me on the couch. I didn't even glance up. The next day, I sent a message to an anonymous account I'd created months ago, just in case. A small detail about Trevor's side hustle. Unlicensed consulting work using corporate data. Technically not illegal, but enough to raise concern. He'd stepped on too many toes already. All I had to do was tilt the floor. Later that week, Megan mentioned casually that he was taking time off. Personal leave. Stress-related. She said it like it didn't matter. But I watched the way her fingers curled around her mug. How her eyes darted toward mine, waiting for a reaction. I gave her none. Let her sit in the quiet. The walls were closing in, and she felt it. I started getting home later. Made sure she never knew where I was. Sometimes I stayed out for hours just to make her wonder. Let her imagination chew holes in the fabric of her certainty. One evening, she asked if everything was okay. I smiled. Of course. She nodded, unsure. The silence that followed was deafening. I let it stretch until it cracked something inside her. That's when she tried to reclaim the upper hand. Made a reservation at a restaurant we used to love. Got dressed up. Wore the earrings I bought her 2 anniversaries ago. I walked in, saw her waiting at the table. Then turned around and left. No text. No explanation. Just vanished. She came home late that night. I was already in bed. Lights off. Breathing even. She didn't speak. Just stood in the doorway, waiting for me to acknowledge her. I didn't. Eventually, she left. Closed the door behind her like it meant something. It didn't. Trevor's fall was silent. His reputation frayed. Promotions he counted on disappeared. Megan had backed the wrong one. And now she was starting to realize it. But by the time she turned to look for me, I was already gone. Not physically. Just gone. It didn't happen all at once. That would have been too easy. Too cinematic. Instead, it cracked in layers. Like ice beneath her feet, she didn't know was thinning. It started with her friends. We had a couple's dinner scheduled with Jeff and Alicia. People she adored. People who used to call us goals. She texted them the night before, confirming. They never replied. The next morning, she asked me if I'd heard from them. I shrugged, pretending not to notice the look of confusion creeping in. That afternoon, I got a message from Jeff. Not getting in the middle, man. But we're here if you need anything. I didn't answer. The day after, she posted a photo of us from last summer. Some filtered memory meant to perform wholeness. Captioned it, "Grateful for love that grows even through storms." Not one like. Not one comment. Even her sister, who normally spammed heart emojis on everything, stayed silent. That evening, she stared at her phone like it betrayed her. Then she tossed it on the couch with too much force, like the silence from the outside world had teeth. She didn't understand yet. But the world she curated was beginning to rot. I hadn't said a word to anyone, not directly. But truth doesn't need volume when it's timed right. A few weeks prior, I'd had a conversation with her father. Not long, not emotional, just honest. Told him Megan and I were recalibrating. That she was exploring space, and I was letting her have it. His silence was thick. Not angry, just disappointed. The kind of disappointment that doesn't speak. It observes, then withdraws. He stopped calling her weekly. Her mom went quiet too. Megan asked me if I thought they were mad about something. I said I didn't know. She nodded too quickly. Said she'd call them later. She didn't. At work, things didn't help. Trevor wasn't fired, but he wasn't visible anymore. She didn't say much about it. Just that he's not around lately. Her tone made it sound like a loss she wasn't ready to name. The friends who once invited her out every weekend stopped texting. Brunches disappeared. Events dried up. Suddenly, it was just her, and the echo of a life that used to orbit around the illusion of control. At night, I noticed she spent more time scrolling, checking people's stories, watching instead of being watched. Her smile shrank. Her steps softened. She started trying harder at home, making dinner without asking, folding my laundry before I noticed, leaving sticky notes with reminders like she used to. Like maybe going back to normal would undo the distance. But the distance wasn't just space. It was a decision. One night, I overheard her on the phone, whispering to her best friend. She said things felt strange lately, that I wasn't talking much, that something had shifted and she couldn't name it. The friend didn't have much to say. Megan hung up, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall for 20 minutes like she was waiting for the house to speak back. It didn't. The silence was working. It wasn't loud. It didn't scream. But it echoed in every corner of her life she thought she had under control. And it was only getting louder. By now, the house was colder. Not because the heat was off, but because presence had been replaced with absence. We moved through the same space like strangers occupying a waiting room. Every word she spoke felt pre-approved, weighed, rehearsed. Every silence from me cut deeper. She was losing ground, and she knew it. I watched it manifest in small ways. She stayed up later, scrolling through photos of us like nostalgia might rescue her. I caught her looking at me across the kitchen table, searching for recognition. I didn't give it. She tried to close the gap. One night she asked if I wanted to go for a walk, just the two of us. I said I was tired. She paused like she hadn't expected that answer, like it was a test I was supposed to pass. I failed it intentionally. Another night, she came into the spare room. No words. Just climbed under the blanket, close but not touching. She didn't reach for me. Just lay there, her breathing shallow. Waiting. I stayed still. Let her presence pass over me like fog. Eventually, she left. The next morning, she made pancakes. Set the table with fresh coffee. I sat, ate, thanked her, then left without looking back. It wasn't cruelty. It was confirmation. She started calling her mom again. Once. Then twice in a week. No answer. No callbacks. Her voice cracked when she told me she might have said too much during their last call. I didn't ask what she meant. She went quiet after that. Stopped posting. Stopped talking about work. The makeup vanished. The smiles disappeared. She wore the same hoodie 3 days in a row. Her hair stayed in a loose knot that told me she was unraveling. She wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. Especially not me. And I never said a word about it. She began asking things she never asked before. Where I was going. What time I'd be home. If I was meeting someone. I never lied. I just never explained. And the lack of detail became its own answer. She paced now. Every night, like clockwork. Back and forth between the living room and the kitchen. Sometimes she'd stop by the door, hand on the knob like she might leave. She never did. She had nowhere to go. That was the cruelest part. Not my silence, not my absence, but the realization that the bridge she thought would take her somewhere else had burned behind her, and I wasn't the one who lit the fire. She started crying more. Quietly. In the shower. In bed with her back turned. Over dishes she broke just to have a reason to fall apart. One night, she whispered to herself when she thought I was asleep. What happened to us? I didn't answer. I wasn't us anymore. I was shadow, outline, memory. She was surrounded by walls she helped build, and now they were closing in. Not violently, but with elegance, with precision, with inevitability. I had become untouchable, not by running, by standing still while she unraveled in place. She finally broke one evening. It wasn't theatrical. No screaming, no accusations. Just a quiet urgency in her voice as she stood in the hallway, blocking my way like a locked door. We need to talk. I didn't say anything. She reached for my arm, then stopped herself. Her eyes were wet, but not from crying. They were glassy from restraint. She didn't want to beg, but she didn't know what else to do. I feel like I don't know you anymore. I looked at her. That was the closest to honesty she'd spoken in months. Because she didn't. She didn't know the man who no longer followed her mood swings, who didn't chase her approval, who stopped volunteering love that was taken for granted. She didn't know the man who could look her in the face and feel nothing. She asked if there was someone else. Her voice didn't accuse. It feared. I shook my head. That much was true. I wasn't running to anyone. I was walking away from her. She stepped closer, desperate now, reaching for some version of me that no longer existed. I know I haven't been perfect, but this isn't fair. There it was. Not an apology. A negotiation. She wanted to talk about fairness now. After months of deception disguised as detachment. After telling me I was convenient. After lying to my face with the ease of routine. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list her failures. I just said, I'm not angry. That unsettled her more than rage would have. Because anger meant there was still fire. But I was cold. Frozen to the core. And nothing she said could thaw me out. She asked if I was leaving. Not with words, but with her eyes. And for the first time, I let silence answer. I brushed past her, slow and deliberate, and went into the spare room. She didn't follow. Later that night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. Not loud. Just these small, broken breaths like she was afraid the house would punish her for feeling. But it wasn't guilt she felt. It was fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of no longer being the center of the gravity she built between us. Fear of finally being alone in the mess she created. I slept soundly that night. For the first time in years, my dreams weren't haunted by her voice. No more second-guessing. No more trying to fix what she was actively destroying. In the morning, she was in the kitchen, pretending to scroll her phone. She asked if I wanted coffee. I said I'd already had some. She stared at her cup like it had betrayed her. The shift was irreversible now. She knew it. Every gesture, every question, every attempt at small talk was met with something colder than indifference. Peace. Peace she hadn't earned. Peace she couldn't interrupt. The confrontation she wanted would never come. Because I didn't need it. Closure is for those still hoping. I had moved past that. I wasn't closing a door. I was building a new one. And she didn't have the key. She used to own every room she walked into. Now, she barely occupied the space she stood in. There was a weight on her shoulders I didn't place there, but I stopped carrying it for her. Her routine was splintering. Dishes left undone. Deadlines missed. Phone always in her hand, but never ringing. Her world wasn't falling apart because I exposed her. It was collapsing because she'd built it on the idea that I'd always be there to hold it up. And I wasn't. She lost a client at work. Some contract she forgot to follow through on. Said it was a misunderstanding. But the circles she once controlled had started to shrink. Whispers replaced praise. Eyes once admiring now slid past her. She came home early that day. No announcement. Just walked in and sat on the floor in the hallway like her legs had given up. She didn't look at me. She just stared ahead. I stepped over her. That night, she asked if I could take a look at her resume. Said she might start fresh. I told her I was busy. She didn't ask again. Her mother texted once, short, formal. Hope you're well. Megan didn't reply. Just stared at the screen like it was coded in a language she no longer understood. She wasn't being punished. She was being revealed. Without me buffering her world, she had nothing to shield her from consequences. She tried reaching out to old friends. I heard her on the phone, leaving voicemails she immediately regretted, saying things like, just checking in, and let's catch up. No one called back. I started going out more. Gym, bookstore, long drives. Nowhere specific, but somewhere not here. She asked once if I wanted to have dinner together again. I said maybe. She made dinner anyway. I didn't come home until after midnight. She didn't ask where I'd been. She just sat on the couch, eyes red, mascara wiped clean like she'd finally accepted she wasn't impressing anyone. The next day, she deleted all her social media. No announcement. No farewell post. Just vanished. She had curated an identity for years, and now it had no audience. No applause. She looked smaller after that. Not physically, spiritually. Like her presence didn't reach past her own skin. And I felt lighter. I started sleeping deeper, eating better, planning things. I met with my lawyer again, this time to finalize documents I'd prepared months earlier. It was almost done. One morning, I came downstairs and found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a mug of cold coffee. She didn't flinch when I walked in, didn't try to speak. She was learning what silence really meant. Not the absence of sound, the presence of consequence. And she still hadn't heard the last word. It ended exactly how it began. Not with shouting. Not with betrayal caught red-handed. Just silence. A different kind. Not cold anymore. Finished. That morning, I was already packed. 2 suitcases, 1 bag. Everything else had been moved quietly, piece by piece, over the last 2 weeks. She never noticed. She didn't notice much anymore. She was sitting at the table again. Same place. Same mug. Same posture like time had frozen her in place. But the look in her eyes had changed. She knew. Not the details. But the outcome. She didn't ask where I was going. Maybe she thought if she stayed quiet, I'd sit down. Stay? Let her keep pretending. But I'd already given her all the silence I owed her. I walked past her, keys in hand, and left the envelope on the counter. Inside was everything. My lawyer's info, the signed divorce papers, and the note. Just 1 line. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. She didn't move. I didn't look back. Out the door, into the car, and gone before the morning even caught up. No grand scene. No begging. No apologies too late to matter. Just distance. Clean. Final. Absolute. I'd already set everything in motion, utilities, accounts, address changes. The locks on the new place had been changed. The furniture delivered. The name on the lease was mine and mine alone. She'd have to figure out what to do with the echo of me in that house. I gave no statements, made no posts, told no stories. The people who mattered already knew enough. The rest would see it unfold in real time, through her silence, her absence, her unraveling. Freedom didn't feel loud. It felt still. I went for a walk that afternoon, alone, along a trail near my new place. The sky was gray, the air sharp, but everything felt clear. Like I could finally breathe without waiting for the floor to drop. There was no rush to become someone else. I just had to remember who I was before she bent me into something convenient. And now, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Let her wonder. Let her scroll through old messages, reread the silences, question the timeline. Let her try to piece together how it all fell apart without a single fight. She never saw it coming, because she thought silence meant weakness. She never understood. Silence is a man sharpening the knife with which he'll cut himself free. And when that final cut comes, you don't hear it. You just notice he's no longer there. And he never comes back. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.